Well, there's never a dull moment here at the end of Bailey Line Road. A couple of weeks ago, Robert's tankless water heater wasn't flowing water as well as it should have, and we checked the little filter just before the water goes in, and there was some stuff on it, some white fibrous stuff. It's kind of strange because my son Robert gets his water from a well, completely sealed, drilled well, modern well, casing, sealed top. I mean, it's a completely sealed system. So the stuff kind of looks like, well, I don't know, like this.
This stuff right here.
This stuff right here. It's fibrous.
Pretty gross looking is what it is.
Well,
and it's in my water.
Well, and actually, so it was just a little bit before, and we cleaned the filter, and that was fine. But yesterday, it really ramped up. So now Robert tells me how long can a tap run before the screen is plugged with this stuff?
About 30 seconds or so.
I don't know what this could possibly be.
This stuff I collected from inside my bathroom taps. Pulled the screens off those, and this stuff had formed.
So we've had some wonderful warm blue sky weather lately, but of course these things never happen when it's nice outside. It's now colder and snowing, so you're going to get to see us pull the pump out of the well. It's a submersible pump. You know, what we're doing here is the same thing anyone has to do to replace the pump. I really don't know where to begin. There's only 2 straws we're grasping at this stage, and they both seem kind of like long shots, but what else is there? Straw number 1, all of submersible pumps are suspended by a rope. So, I don't know, maybe the rope's deteriorating, although I'm pretty sure we put a yellow poly rope on
we did, yes.
And this doesn't look like yellow poly fibers, so
no.
Kind of a small straw, that is. I'm wondering, though, maybe there's some kind of synthetic bearing inside the submersible pump, and maybe it's deteriorating. Maybe it's breaking down and admitting this stuff into the water. Now, the bad news there is that we have to buy a new submersible pump. The good news is that if that's the case, then none of this stuff is in the water of the well. It's just being generated by the pump itself and then shot into the house. So we'll see. So Robert's taken the bolts off this cap, and you can see this is well sealed. I mean, there's a seal around it. This conduit goes all the way down to the bedrock and then over into the house. Completely sealed wire chamber. We got that yellow poly rope there like we thought. So I don't know. Maybe when we pull this pump out, some light will be shed on this. Down there is the pitless adapter, which is like an elbow, a plumbing elbow that can come apart. And this thing here threads into the top of that elbow. We thread it in, and then we yank, and then the elbow comes apart. The elbow that would take the water supply from the pipe coming up from the pump, takes it through the side of the casing. So that's called the pitless adapter. This screws into the top of it, and then it comes apart, and then we pull out wires and rope and the pipe with the pump on the end. If my hypothesis of the self-destructing pump is actually the case, then we should have no fibers coming out of this well if we put another pump on it. We're going to pump a bunch of water and see if there are any fibers in it. If there isn't, then absolutely 100%. That tells me that the pump is self-destructing inside. If such a thing is even a thing. I don't know. Right now I'm just hunting around here. And we certainly don't want to cross-thread this baby. We need more light. That's not enough light. So while I was at the house getting a trouble light so I could see the pitless adapter and get the pump so we could test this water, Robert got the T-handle on.
Just got lucky.
I guess, yeah. Now, so the trick now is to yank on this thing to pull the tapered part of the pitless adapter apart and then to pull it out. The water is within, last time we measured, 13 or 14 feet, so we didn't have to put a lot of pipe on the pump. It's not like at our place where we have 130 feet of pipe. We only have 30 here, so. Try a little pressure here. Oh, was that it?
Yeah.
Wow, that was easy. I'll get the phone. So, how come the old guy's doing all the heavy lifting here?
Well, someone's got to operate the camera.
There it is. A pump. There's certainly nothing obviously unusual here. This deteriorating pump hypothesis of mine may be happening without any outward appearance. The troubleshooting thing to do is just to start pumping some water out of here. I've got the pipe into the well for our exploratory pumping. There's a foot valve on the end. I've filled this line with water. This is just my portable gas-powered utility pump. I put a union on here so that the pipe can come off and for transport and things like that. And now it's time to put it back on again. Okay, the only other priming we need to do is the priming of the pump case itself. Well, the water's pretty brown, if nothing else. But you know, yeah, but not naturally occurring, I don't think, because we've shoved this pipe down, and it's got a curve to it, and I think it's kind of scraped some of the sides of the casing. But I am noticing. Well, I mean, you saw the sink full of stuff last night. If this was in your sink, would you have seen?
Yeah, no, there's nothing in there.
There's nothing in there.
It's a pump problem.
Well, it could be. It could be. The one thing I want to do is to spend $600 or $700 on a new submersible pump to replace the one that was working perfectly a little while ago. You thought that, didn't you?
Of course.
Yeah. Robert is not as happy as I am. Before we start trying to pull this pump apart and determine for sure if that's the problem, I just thought I'd show you a bit of the setup here. I like to go to extra trouble when installing a submersible pump, and so there's features here you might want to know about. One of them is this thing. It's called a torque arrestor. You basically you mount it such that it swells, so you move this down far enough when you're installing it so it swells, and it forms a kind of a rubber bumper. Because when this pump starts, when any submersible pump starts, there's a certain reaction to the torque, and it causes the whole shebang to swing from side to side inside the well, and the pump can hit the sides of the well, not hard, but over and over, thousands of times every time it starts and stops. Same with all the piping and stuff. So this acts as a kind of a rubber bumper, and if you look at it, you can see it's been working. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there's little flat spots here where it's been hitting the side, so it's doing its job. I like to protect the wires, because one of the leading causes of submersible pump failure is not the pump at all, but it's just that these wires, if the torque arrestor isn't in place or it isn't working properly, will hit the side of the well over and over again and will wear through the insulation. So as soon as practical, we got these wires protected in a second pipe, and it goes all the way up. A pump like this comes only with short wires, and you splice on the length you need. These are special. So I soldered this. Instead of using crimp-on connectors, I solder them. It's much more reliable. And then I use heat shrink tubing, heavy-duty heat shrink tubing with some goo inside. So I was going to take off the bottom end of this pump here, but I realized this is the motor part. This is the motor, and this is the pump. Nothing happening down here is going to get into the water, because this is a sealed motor unit. The water intake is here, and the impellers are here. This is the thing that moves the water. So if we have a breakdown of parts, it's occurring in here. So you can see the water down there. It's not too far. We didn't hit water until 130 feet, but it rose quite high. So it's pretty close to the surface as these things go. We're going to do one last test. We've pumped this well with a gas-powered pump, not detected a single fiber in the water. We're going to put the pump back in the well, but not all the way. We're going to leave the pitless adapter which is this thing here. We're going to put the submersible back in. We're going to leave this above the ground, and then we're going to energize the pump. Water should just come gushing out. We'll take a sample there. If my hypothesis about breaking up impellers is true, then we should see fibers in that water. Can you see those fibers floating around? That's water from the pump, from the submersible pump, put temporarily back down in the well. I'm putting my hand here so the camera focuses on the water instead of the reflection of the trees. But yeah, there was absolutely none of this when we pumped water with the gas pump. So we have absolutely isolated this to that submersible pump. So we've found a 120 volt pump, two of them actually, one quite cheap, $110 new, and another one quite expensive, $900 for that one. Before we take everything apart, just want to be sure, you know, we have fibers coming in when the submersible's back in the well. You saw that? I don't know. I just want to be absolutely sure. We're examining this again. This is the stuff that keeps clogging. You know, we're worried here that maybe it's Teflon tape or something like that. But I mean, we used a little bit of that for some of the fittings, but I don't know. This doesn't seem like Teflon tape to me. But I mean, the last thing in the world we want to do is to change that pump and find out that that wasn't the problem at all. Short of actually seeing an impeller disintegrating. I don't even know what these impellers look like. They're just little propellers that push the water. But short of seeing one broken inside the pump, and there's no convenient way that I've seen to get it apart, we can't actually be 100% sure. But so I don't know. That's what it looks like.
So there have been some developments.
There have been some developments. We were 95% sure that the pump was bad and that something was chewing itself up inside, something plastic, and sending these chunks of plastic through. No plumber we talked to today, and we talked to two very experienced plumbers that ever heard of such a thing, but we isolated it. You know, we pumped water out of the well with a gas-powered pump, no chunks, no fibers. We hooked up the old pump again. We pumped. We had fibers. Seems pretty straightforward. More difficult, we're actually pretty lucky to find this. I forgot that we had chosen a 120 volt pump for this. That is not standard. Standard is 240. We chose 120 so that we could run the pump off of a small generator if need be someday. But that means that none of the hardware stores around have that kind of pump, and it would be a week or more before they brought it in. So we did talk to a plumber who had this is it, a 120 volt submersible pump, half horsepower. It's going to move all the water we need, 10 gallons a minute. He's used this pump briefly at his own deer hunting camp. So it's almost new. It's not very cheap. It is a soft start pump, which I'd never heard of before, but it starts slowly and gently, so it doesn't have a huge spike in current on startup, and that lets you run these things with an even smaller generator. So we're going to get this baby in. There's some wiring differences we have to deal with, but we also have to put on some fittings.
It's interesting to me. You seem to know the exact steps to take to figure out a problem like this, even if you don't know the solution right away. You know the steps. It seems only a life of experience can give you the experience you need.
Yeah, logic too. I mean, these projects are always unpredictable. So really all you can do is take the next few steps. And it's never very complicated. Well, not never, but not usually. The next step's pretty simple. Drive to the shop, salvage the fitting, bring it back and install it.
Well, got the old fitting off the old pump, ready to head back to my place. So is there anything else that we need down there that we're only going to remember when we get there?
No, there's nothing else. We will remember when we get down there, though.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, we can try to trick fate and remember ahead of time, but that never works.
You're lucky you're only a 3-minute drive away.
You're going to use that overpowered hair dryer to expand the rings here and the old bit of PEX pipe and get that off.
This is a ProPEX connection. Not too many people know about this, not too many lay people. But it's a system that swells the end of the pipe, and then you put the fitting together, and then it just closes down by a slow elastic motion so that it grips the pipe. But of course you can't get it apart once it's together, so what you do is you heat it, make it soft, then cut into the ring, remove the ring. You'll see what happens here. So this is a heat gun. This fitting might get too hot to hold before we get done here, but I'm going to give it a try. The second, I'm going to have to do something similar to actually get the remnant of the pipe off. But I don't want to cut so far that I put a nick in the fitting. There we go. That's what we're after. Okay, let's get this baby installed now. Yeah, that's the right thread. I don't know, that other thing must be some weird metric thing. This is the way the ProPEX system works. This ring goes on here, and then we use this tool to expand, to swell it up, and it holds the swollen position, and then we jam the fitting in and hold it there for 15 seconds or so, and then it shrinks back down on it.
And this tool is Milwaukee's ProPEX expander.
Right. There. I'm just going to hold it there until it shrinks down.
It shrinks pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's already fairly tight. I don't think I'd be able to get it apart now. Okay, we're going to have to make some connections here. Now this is what they call a 2-wire pipe, a pump. This is the 120 volt hot and the neutral, and then this is a ground. But the old pump was a 4-wire. So we're basically going to have to put black to black. We're going to put white to red down here. And then we're just going to run, well, you'll see later. We're going to run power right to these wires instead of through the control box.
Because
this is a different pump. This
has no control box.
The control elements are inside the pump. I've got the wires strung through the torque arrestor here. I've routed them in these slots. It's never immediately clear. I've done a lot of these. It's never immediately clear to me how to run the wires, but I think they're pretty protected. They're between these pieces of rubber. The clamp is over top of them, but not touching them. I mean, I can still move it. This one's kind of tight, but only because it's being squeezed by the rubber on the side. So I think we're good. We have to squish the torque arrestor like this so that it becomes the right diameter. I'm going to aim for, like this is 6 1/4 inch well casing. I'm going to aim for 5 inch.
That'll give us room to get past the pitless adapter.
Right. Now, the normal procedure here is to use some crimp connections. Just to, it slips over, it squeezes in place and makes the connection. But
you're not.
I like soldering. So
stronger and more reliable connection. Now, of course, we're going to have some guy in the comments. Excuse me, I've been a plumber for 47 years. Always use crimp-on connections. Never had one let go.
Right.
Good for him. We're not going to do that.
There. So now it's time for us to make up for the fact that we cross-threaded into the pitless adapter, and I really don't want to have that issue again.
By we, you mean me.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was happening when I started, actually. So the thing is, so this is the fitting that connects the pipe. And this is, like I said before, it's like half of an elbow. The other half of the elbow is in the well. It's going through the casing. It's bolted in place, and this just fits down inside and interlocks. And now you have an elbow. So the water's coming up from the pump down below, turns 90 degrees, goes horizontally to the house here. There's fitting threads on both ends. This thread is for that handle that you saw us using before. And then this thread is for the fitting. It would be a really terrible thing to put the fitting in here and to install the pitless adapter upside down, because when you lower it down, hey, why isn't that going together? Right? Why isn't that going together? Well, it's because it's upside down. You see there's a ledge here, no ledge there. So it's got to go this way. So who do we have here watching us? Hi, Lily.
That's my two girls.
Hi, Mommy.
They seem to be in a pretty good mood at the moment, even though they haven't had water for a while.
Well, we've got that camping water cooler in there to keep us hobbling along.
While this is shrinking, okay, there's two more things we need to do before we put this pump back in. We have to figure out how to get the rope on that little wee substandard lug they've given us. And we need to tape up these wires on their way to that protective piping.
Let's do the easy one first, taping the wires. Tape giving you some trouble?
Yeah, it's not ordinary tape. It's this sort of stretchy stuff, and it fuses on itself in time. So it actually becomes a sleeve of rubber. But maybe this roll is older than I thought or something, but that backing isn't coming off too reliably. Supposed to tie a rope on this, but as you've seen before, a little wee lug. But I managed to get all three stands separately through the lug, and now I'm weaving it back. It is saving the day. This thing back up again. We've got the new pump in place. The torque arrestor is adjusted, I hope, properly for the inside. Taped up to protect the wires here before they go into that protective pipe there. So I'm going to feed it in. Robert's going to control the handle here, and then hope to get that pitless adapter interlocked properly with the other half.
Okay, and the last little bit of the lowering process here. There's the pitless adapter down there. Okay, hold it right there. No, a little bit in. Okay, so with a little blunt force trauma on the back end of this axe, we got it to interlock. Phase 1 of the mission complete.
Yes, we just have to fool around with some wiring and then flip the switch. So we've got one more step to do. As I mentioned before, the pump that we put in is what's called a 2-wire pump. So there's 2 wires that come out of it. 3 actually, considering the ground, but they call it a 2-wire pump. And the pump that was in there before was a 4-wire pump. And those 4-wire pumps, you make use of what's called a control box here. So the idea with the control box is that it puts some of the serviceable parts above ground. So if we have a problem with the capacitor or this thing, whatever that is, the relay, we can change that without having to pull the pump out. But with the 2-wire pump, all of these components are in the pump. So I actually prefer to have the control box so we can service things like this, but we didn't have a choice today. So we have to kind of modify things. I don't want to take this control box off because we may want to put a 4-wire pump on it someday. So you can see here, I'm going to make use of these terminals to essentially bypass the box altogether. So the white and the black, that comes from the pressure switch, which is over here. So we have the incoming power feed, which is unplugged right now, comes in here. When the pressure switch decides that the pressure is too low in the tank, then contacts close and the electricity can flow through this flexible cable, armored cable here. And so that's the black and the white. So we have power here. Now the pump that we have has 3 wires. It has a green, which is just a ground, which is connected to here, so we don't need to do anything with that. The black, this thick black one, goes to the black wire in the pump, and the red one goes to the white wire on the pump, and the yellow one's just sitting there doing nothing. The 2 blacks under one terminal, the white and the red under one terminal, which is the same orientation. We had them out at the pump. The yellow not connected to anything, because that was the excess, the 4th wire. And so that should be good to go, right? It's the moment of truth. Hope for the best here. Oh, what's going on? Water coming in? Can you imagine? Well, there you go. Well, I hope you like this video about restoring some water. Check out my website and newsletter in the description box and give me a like if you've liked things.